Yeah, like, it's also, like, the DEI thing that's, like, I hate it when people, like, well, not, like, when we're saying, like, something, like, we're just informing people, but, like, when people are, like, oh, they don't support DEI. I hate it when they just make a blanket statement of DEI. I'm like, okay, no, say the full thing.
Yeah.
I want to know which one you don't fucking, like, say it. Diversity, equity, or inclusion is something you don't stand for. Say the full fucking sentence, because I dare you. Your fucking and your inside should chill. Should have chills. If you don't, then you're fucking numb, bitch.
It's wild. So yeah, now.
Hey, girly pop. Welcome back to another episode of Definitely Delusional. My name is Dean.
And I'm Emily.
Girly pop. Technology gets us messed up.
Girl, it is the eclipse season. I don't know if Mercury is in retrograde right now. The planets are doing some crazy stuff.
No, it is.
Yeah, today's the 30th, right? They literally said today is going to be a very chaotic day. And they weren't lying. I mean, no false advertisement.
I'm just like, the way I'm staring into y'all's souls right now is the way how I'm feeling, because I'm like, wait a minute, like, what's going on? Venus is in retrograde, Mercury's in retrograde.
Something's in the microwave.
Honestly, this episode is sponsored by the microwave, because what the fuck? By the tarot or astrology, girl. Well, we literally were about to, like, pull out a block on each other right now, because we're just so stressed out.
Oh, if you could be a fly on the wall in this filming session, we could not get the audio and visual to work together, and my microphone was being difficult.
Yeah.
But we figured out, nevertheless, we persisted.
We always persist. Just any of us.
So funny. I was actually going to dedicate this sponsorship to Bill Nye, because we're talking a lot about science. I got my teaching glasses on. So I loved Bill Nye growing up, and we're dedicating it to science and learning, because I feel like that really shaped my childhood. Did you ever watch Bill Nye when you were in school?
No, I was a gay ass kid. I was watching, like, Totally Spies.
Okay, I also was watching Totally Spies. So, okay, I was also watching that. But I loved, like, whenever the teacher was like, I don't feel like teaching today. Like, we're going to watch Bill Nye the Science Guy. And I fucking ate that shit up. I loved Bill Nye. He actually was an opener at EDC in 2019. He was so funny. He had, like, a bunch of jokes. I was like, Bill? Oh, yeah, he's Bill.
Not Bill having more fun than me.
Oh, yeah. Bill was having a good time. He was, like, the premiere opener on Friday. And I was like,
Aubrey. Oh my god.
I know.
Wow. Honestly, science, though, sometimes I'm like, love it, but then I'm like, can someone, like, conjure up science that'll, like, make someone fall in love with me?
So what you're wanting is more or less love spells. You're wanting witchcraft. You're wanting, like, the mystical part of the realm.
Maybe I would just call someone from, like, Etsy.
To make you a love potion?
I need. That's, I've been, like, low-key kind of crashing out, so, you know what's up. Like,
some things never change.
Well, that's true. Things, well, I mean, here's the thing. I feel like I crash out and then I'm like, okay, well, I have to lock in. But then I'm also just like, some of my crash outs, it's like the unhealed version of me coming out a little bit sometimes, because I'm like, oh my God, like, I'm reverting back. But most of it is because of another person's action, like,
Yeah, I get that. But at the end of the day, don't allow somebody else to steal your peace of mind, baby. Not worth it.
Yeah, you're right. I'm not letting the universe do that to me, because there's no way.
You are the architect of your reality, babe. You are in the driver's seat, in control. We're locked in.
Locked and loaded. Okay, so this episode, I didn't even, like, really drink that much water, so because, like, I knew I wasn't gonna be talking that much. Because I was like, Emily is about to drop some tea. Oh, yeah.
Yes. So you're crashing out, with your personal life. I feel like I'm simultaneously crashing out because I come from a science background, and I'm kind of seeing what's going on in our world and right now with the government and all the scientific people. We are clutching our pearls. We are preparing for potentially a crash landing, but we're going to get into this, and we're going to do a ton of learning today, babe. So I feel like I'm a teacher. I got my teaching glasses on. I'm gonna take you to class today, babe.
Oh, I'm excited to learn, because I don't know shit. Just kidding. Here's the thing. if you also like the news has been like so overwhelming, like looking at everything. So I haven't really been like reading every single headline. So like that's why I'm excited because I need to like be more on up to date with things. And that's on me because I know that like if I go down like a rabbit hole, I'll like continue to go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, no, and I think a lot of this is by design. Like right now, what's going on is it is so overwhelming with things that are being upended. There's just so much going on in the news cycle that it's meant to overwhelm you to make you feel like you need to disengage and dissociate. Like this is intentional. Like this is not coincidental. And there are so many things going on. It is impossible for you to keep track of everything. So that's why it's important to find maybe a couple of things that you're very passionate about to research and then, allow other people to kind of research other things because you can't be Google on everything. It's not possible. Like there's no way. It takes way too much brain effort. And that's why you need other people to come in and do the research about the things that they're good at.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. So what topic do we want to start on first?
Okay. So, in my opinion, there are three things that are kind of going on since this new administration took office that I kind of want to go into. So, the first one is that President Trump has stated that he's considering either completely eliminating the HIV prevention division within the CDC or moving it somewhere else within the Department of Health and Human Services. So essentially what this prevention division does is it is in charge of nationally giving funding for HIV research. It also tracks the testing, so making sure that people are being tested appropriately, the surveillance. So if there are certain communities that are more affected, maybe certain geographical areas that are more affected, the CDC needs to know these data points. And also they're responsible for getting out factual education about the topic as well as providing prevention. So like the PrEP. So all these things are what the HIV prevention division of the CDC does. And what the CDC's goal is, it's supposed to keep the United States safe from either infectious diseases or health outbreaks. It's responsible for tracking these things. It's ensuring that you have scientists that are using evidence-based practice to make sure that everything we have is up to date, the best way to treat it. We have the most up-to-date protocols. And I think the big issue that people get frustrated with is the idea that science is stagnant. Science all the time, we say science is quote unquote alive when it's not like alive in the sense that you and I are, but we're constantly finding better ways to do things. We're constantly finding that maybe the one way that we did something before, it's not the most efficient. So when you get all of these, recommendations from the CDC, especially during COVID, people felt they're like, well, what do you mean you need to wear a mask and now you don't need to, and now you need to stand 6 feet away and now you need a contact trace, and like it got very confusing. But as you find more efficient ways to do things, it's going to change. So that can be very frustrating if you're like, I can barely keep up. But that's, science is frustrating. It's not a perfect thing, and we're constantly trying to get better as more people research things. Like it gets improved upon. Because if you think about like maybe the way you did things when you were younger, you're like, why did I do it that way?
Mm-hmm.
And then it gets updated and you're like, damn, well, that was a stupid way to do it.
But that's the thing about, I think like science is just like ever changing. And like sometimes you just don't know, like it depends on like, I guess like the newer information that you find out, And like, so I just am excited to hear like everything that you have. Cause girl, today is going to be my fake glasses because I'm wearing contacts right now. I need like to put on like I need to learn. I need to learn. So go off, girl.
So the first thing is potentially our HIV prevention division either being eliminated or it's getting moved somewhere where it historically isn't. And with that, it would fall under Department of Health and Human Services, which is what RFK oversees. So I don't know how that's
the man that sounds like his lung. He has like a 1/4 of a lung.
Yeah, babe. Yeah, him. That one. Yes. So the second thing that we're going to get into is you've heard about Doge. Doge.
I can't because I was literally reading a document where it was like Doge is like everything like has to be called like the Doge leader of like whatever, like putting that in front of like the position names or whatever, or like the contract between the people, and I was like, I can't read anymore because, girl, no.
So Doge, if listeners don't understand what it is, it's essentially the division that Elon Musk is running, and it stands for the Department of Government Efficiency. So what their quote unquote goal is they wanted to eliminate unnecessary bureaucratic spending, but they ended up slashing a ton of federal programs and also global programs. And one of the programs that they significantly cut funding to was US aid. So what USAID does is it helps other countries maybe that are going through like poverty or natural disasters, or they're trying to establish democratic governments. It helps them financially with resources. And this was actually created in the 1960s by JFK, RFK's uncle. And what it really sought to do was counteract like the Soviet Union's place in the world. So we thought, why don't we as Americans show diplomacy, and we can help these countries promote democracy and essentially earn favor to try to counteract the rise of communism and the USSR, taking on these territories. Like, we really wanted to be like, no, we have a place in the world. Like, we're your formidable opponent. And we're doing this through helping people and public services and things like that. So what USAID did is, as the HIV epidemic was happening, it started giving services to a lot of places in like Africa or other parts of the world where HIV was becoming prevalent. And unfortunately, with this huge slash in USAID funding, there are now over 20 million people in the world who no longer have their medication for HIV.
Excuse me?
No, like it gives me chills. Over 20 million people no longer have medication.
Whoa.
600,000 of those are children, and the children contracted them because their mothers, they either got it through like when they were pregnant through the placenta, so they were born with HIV, or they got it through breast milk. So now we no longer have people with medication that is preventing their HIV from becoming transmittable. It is estimated that within these next 4 years, HIV worldwide is going to increase 6 times. And that means more children are going to be born with HIV. That means people are going to be spreading HIV, that it's going to get worse. And all these years of progress that we have had going forward eradicated. And what I find to be so interesting is whenever Donald Trump was running for office in 2019, he stood on a stage at a campaign rally and said that if he were to be reelected in 2020, he was going to eradicate HIV entirely and cure cancer. So he made these two blanket bold statements, yet here we are essentially dismantling all the progress that we've had with HIV. It's like, it's so crazy. It makes you just kind of feel like, am I being gaslit right now? Like, what?
Girl, I feel like people just like believe in too much of like what they hear. And that goes with like everything. People like listen to people's words more than people's actions.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
In current events and life,
Yeah.
dating, eating. No, literally. But like, give me that. Like, look at her. Look at the research. I'm like afraid of this because I'm already like shook and having her chokeholds. Like, because I'm like, there's so much information she wants to share, and I'm like, bruh.
No, but it's important to know what's going on, and I promise this is going to be a lot of history, civics, science, social things. Like, it's important because it is all interconnected. Like, everything doesn't exist in like a vacuum. Like, there are so many things that we're like, how did we get here? And it's like, all right, once you kind of start unraveling that first like layer of it, and you're like, oh my God, that's like an onion. It's like an onion. There's so many layers of what's going on. But it's important that you know these things, so that way going forward we can make educated decisions and choices, and we can start speaking out on things and be like, hey, no, that's messed up. This is public health. It's a problem.
I mean, listen. But like every other place, like whenever you tell them about like our help system, they're like, wait, you don't have that for free?
Yeah, our health system's a mess.
I'm like, well, I guess. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're like this richest. We're not even the richest, but we're the sickest country.
Oh yeah, we're a third world country, Gucci belt. Like, let's be real. Well, and then the last thing that I wanted to talk about too, and this kind of ties back to the CDC and public health and things like that. Um, whenever Donald Trump took office, he signed in a whole slew of executive orders. So, he was on like his little pen or not pen, because I know he went into a pissing match about it needs to be signed with a pen, even though he docu-signs everything. So don't let him fool with that. But he signed in this executive order that said essentially a few. One was, any program federally and even in the private sector as well that has DEI, which stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion, that is going to be gone away with. And then the second executive order that he signed in was that there's only two genders, male or female. So what this forced these federal organizations to do is essentially like take down all their information that had anything to do with gender, inclusivity, race.
Yeah, you see the travel website?
Yeah.
Like now it's LGB.
Yeah. Yeah, they got rid of the LGBTQI plus, like all of that's gone. With transgender, you cannot find that on any documentation anymore.
Yeah, like it's also like the DEI thing. That's like, I hate it when people like, well, not like when we're saying like something like we're just informing people, but like when people are like, oh, they don't support DEI. I hate it when they just make a blanket statement of DEI. I'm like, okay, no, say the full thing.
Yeah.
I want to know which one you don't fucking like. Say it. Diversity, equity, or inclusion is something you don't stand for. Say the full fucking sentence, because I dare you. Your fucking and your inside should chill. Should have chills. If you don't, then you're fucking numb, bitch.
It's wild. So yeah, now all these federal organizations were scrambling to be like, well, we don't want to be non-compliant, because left and right, they're chopping up organizations entirely. Like they're just dismantling everything. So what happened was the CDC pulled a ton of databases, websites that had to do with tracking HIV in certain races.
Yeah, Laura, got taken down.
Yeah, they got taken down. They were absolutely taken down. If you look currently at the CDC, there's no mention of LGBTQI plus anything. When you look at research, there is no talk about, certain populations of, people are more affected by maybe this communicable disease. So we've lost a lot of this research. It was taken down. And what was really scary was doctors noticed it, and they were looking. There's an app. The CDC had an app that is so valuable to people that are working in public health, where they're like, hey, you can look up all these STIs and this is how you treat them. The app was non-functional. So now you have doctors in clinics that are looking up the best medication to prescribe somebody who might have chlamydia or someone who might have a new diagnosis of HIV. And they're looking and they're like, wait, which antibiotic do I give? For the bacterial ones. And so there was an organization called Doctors for America. It comprises of over 27,000 doctors across every specialty you can think of, as well as medical students. And they're a lobby group that essentially says, we're going to put our patients over politics. We're going to always fight for, our patients. We took a Hippocratic oath to help people. When we got our medical degrees, we said we're not going to harm people. We're not going to let politics sway evidence-based practice and science. Like, we won't do it. So Doctors for America essentially sued like the CDC and the Department of Health and Human Services federally in court for taking down this information, saying that you were actually harming the public. This is not legal. And the case was seen by a federal judge, and the federal judge ruled, luckily, in favor of the Doctors for America. So they had to reinstate all of the websites. However, the websites, there's missing information and they are not the same. So things have been altered on them. They are not what they were previously. So some of the information, like, we're still a little hesitant on, like, is what we're seeing factual? Like, what really has been altered? And it's so hard to tell at this point. There's so much.
It's just so hard to tell everything nowadays, because like even then, like, there's so much misinformation on the web that like even when you read like, oh, it could, but the crazy thing is like these are on .gov websites, the websites that people tell you like, oh, you could trust and stuff. So it's like now it's like, why should we trust the .com thing when it could be like someone on a .com website literally giving real right information, and then the government literally being like, fuck you all.
Well, yeah, it's censorship. And it's really scary when it gets to be in public health because we're already so behind the eight ball when it comes to anything like remotely sexual based, even if it's research. We live in a very puritanical society where it's like, oh my God, sex is like taboo to even talk about. And the craziest thing about this is we say that, or not we, I don't, but there are all these thoughts about like sexual impurity and like you shouldn't be talking about this. When you look at the pyramid and the triangle, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you've taken psychology. Remember that? Sex is literally the bottom tier next to food, water, sleep. Sex is like reproducing is what puts forward society. If you think about it in that way, not everyone wants to have a child. I'm not saying like you have to reproduce, but like that is a core part of survival. So why are we sitting here treating sex as this like disgusting, abhorrent thing? And then the second you get married, people push you to have it. And then you're just like, you have no information. It's like going in blind.
The thing is that the people who like always like judge people who, or not judge, but like I guess like put people down for like the whole like sex thing or like sex shame or like whatever the fuck, they're the freakiest ones.
Oh, for sure.
Behind closed doors, and
sure.
They have the biggest, darkest, deepest secrets.
Oh, for sure. And this whole thought process of erasing, LGBTQI plus people because you believe that engaging in maybe what you think are homosexual acts is not natural. Homosexual behavior or same-sex behavior is seen in over 1,200 species. And that includes species that are vertebrates and invertebrates. So, I mean, every single kind of species that you can think of engages in same-sex behavior. And it is seen most prevalent in primates, which humans share 98.8% of the same DNA. So it's like, hi, whether or not you believe in evolution, I mean, if you don't believe in evolution, I really know what else you believe in. So, you have your opinions, I have mine. But science is backing up that this is a very natural behavior. And it's seen and well documented throughout history. Like from the first civilizations.
No, yeah.
It has been documented.
I actually do believe in evolution. Like, because it's like, except men don't evolve though. It's true. Just kidding. No, but like the thing is like, I think that like do the research, like even the fucking, what do you call it? Even in mythology, bitch, they have like the thing, like things that gods and like the fucking, I don't fucking know. But anyway.
Yeah. So what I also wanted to end that with is currently, yes, the websites are reinstated. There was a congressman, or there is a congressman from Tennessee who put a resolution on the Congress floor that wants to impeach that judge for ruling in favor of Doctors for America and saying that he is committing high crimes because he's checking back. So currently, all these executive orders are, a lot of them, they're being overturned. But you have now politicians playing political theater. They're like, we need to impeach these judges. They're committing crimes of treason. It's like, no, that's the way this is structured. So
I just can't, like, people, it's just like, I feel like we are in a playground right now and it's not pretty.
No, it's a mess. It's an absolute mess. Yeah. So I'm going to take this back to civics because I have a theory that if you gave the majority of the American population a civics exam, they could not pass it. They truthfully do not know how the government or the Constitution.
Yeah.
They don't know how anything's ran. They don't really understand. Like they understand concepts, but they really don't understand framework. Like,
yeah, like I get some of it, but then I probably don't even know a lot of it because like I think no, but it's true because the education system, you like learn it to a certain point, but then it's like in your real life, you're not really like using it that much. I'm like, they want it to be that way. And so like the fact that I even know it's because I took AP like history and shit. Yeah. And so like that's why I like kind of have an idea and like have a little bit more knowledge than the general person. But like had I not had that, girl.
Yeah. Had you not had a good education, you wouldn't know what's going on. Huh?
I mean, you're my education. How?
I'll be the education.
Out of school.
Way. So after the Revolutionary War, which ended in 1776, we now had a nation that was free, but we're like, what do you do with this? So the founding fathers, who I'm just going to say this for factual correctness, were all white and they all owned land and some of them even owned people.
Oh.
So you had all these affluent white men that were the quote unquote founding fathers. They came together and they were like, how the hell are we going to run this? Because first part is getting your freedom. The second part is, how are we going to keep staying free? Like, how are we going to keep this ship afloat? So they met at the Constitutional Convention and they heavily debated how this government was going to be structured. And they didn't always agree. They fought about shit left and right. They fought about so many things, like differing ideas depending on where you lived. Slavery was a huge one that they could not get along. That almost broke apart the country, even back then. So the thing that they did decide, though, they put aside their differences and they decided, okay, we cannot have a government like a monarchy. We cannot have one sole branch or part that can eclipse the will of the people, because then that's not democratic. So they decided upon our 3-branch system. And so if you think about it like a triangle.
With checks and balances.
Yeah, checks and balances. Yeah, so checks and balances are. So they decided to think about it like a triangle. And, when triangle, it has equal parts. It's fluid.
Yeah, equilibrium.
Yes.
Okay, equal. What is it called? Girl, not me trying to reference math. I'm like, equilateral triangle.
Yes. So they have this beautiful triangle. So if you think of the triangle, if everyone in their head can think of the triangle, we'll just say the top of the triangle is the executive branch. The executive branch is the president and the vice president. They're like the spokespeople of the country, and they can enact laws and do executive orders, and which I'll explain executive orders after this. But, they're like the tip of the triangle. And then you have down, on the other corner, you have the legislative branch. The legislative branch is made up of Congress, and Congress is made up of senators. So the Senate with senators and House of Representatives with the representatives. And that's determined, there's each state gets 2 senators, depending, 2, and that's it. And then House of Representatives is actually based off on population. So there's some times that some states get more House of Representatives depending on the census. So that's why it's important you need to do the census, because that affects your representation in Congress. So stop skipping out on censuses.
When do they send those censuses out? I feel like
every 20 years. Like,
yeah,
send them out.
Girl, I haven't seen that.
Yeah. So that'll determine, how your districts are going to be made up, and that can really change a political landscape. So, plug for the census. So the legislative branch, they're the ones that they can actually they actually like bring bills to the floor, which then can become laws. Did you watch a Schoolhouse Rock? Just a bill.
Oh, yeah.
That's the best reference on how to kind of learn, how it goes through the Senate and the Congress. And actually, if you watch Legally Blonde 2, Red, White, and Blonde, they have like a really cute like explanation, which is like really campy on like how bills are made, because she goes to like DC and does that.
But I feel like, okay, here's the thing though. I feel like even if people knew all these things, like what he is doing or like what's happening in our world, like news wise, like I want to get a little bit more into that because like I think that people like you can know all the background, but I'm like trying to throw in people's faces like what the fuck is going on.
Well, that's what I'm going to get to. And then the third part is you have your judicial branch, and that is all your courts, and that's your judges. And like, all of this works in a triangle. And in a healthy democracy, all of these check each other, because, with executive orders, and this is where it all kind of goes into play, executive orders at the end of the day are just declarations from the president.
Yeah.
But they are not laws. However, these declarations have to be carried out by federal organizations like your ICE, your CDC, your what's another one? Yeah, ICE, CDC. There's a million other things. Like the National Park Service. So all these Department of Education, these things that are actively being affected and gutted have to follow executive orders. However, what checks executive orders, like before that we talked about, is the court system. The court system determines the validity of, these executive orders, because the framework of this government is enshrined in our Constitution. And the Constitution has 3 parts. It has a preamble, which is like, we the people of the United States in order for a more perfect union. You have the 7 articles. The 7 articles spell out explicitly the roles of the executive branch, judicial, and the legislative. And it goes through like what they can and cannot do, X, Y, Z. And it allows how the Constitution can have amendments. And then you have your 27 amendments. And the first 10 are the Bill of Rights. So that's like free speech, free press, the right to practice whatever religion you want, the right to bear arms, like all these things that we consistently fight about and we're saying like, this is constitutional, this is not constitutional.
Yeah.
So in summary, and how we're getting to the present day, the goal of the Trump administration through Project 2025 is to... Girl, I know
Did
this is...
research on Project 2025.
I did research on fucking everything.
I know.
So the goal of this Project 2025, which has a lot of its goals even, carried out within the first, 90 days?
This has read out so many. Actually,
yeah, so much. They have. Their goal at the end of the day is to restructure the federal government that essentially makes the executive branch kind of the sole decision maker. And it makes our court systems weaker, and it makes Congress inefficient. So this restructuring of like all these hidden like bills that they're trying to push through, saying that, the president can take away whatever he feels like, that pushes us more towards a monarchy and completely erodes our democracy, which is enshrined in our Constitution. So you can't really say that you love America and you're a patriot if you're sitting here trying to dismantle the Constitution. Yeah. Can you hit it? Yeah.
It's just like one of those things where I'm like, who the fuck do you think you are, number one? But also it's like, the reason, how I imagine it is like, there's a reason why it looks like it's a triangle, an equal triangle. But if it's like pulled, bitch, that becomes an obtuse triangle. Which is like, bitch, that's how he is in the head, obtuse. Because what in the shit? Like, and like the fucking, it's like, at least own up to it. Okay, give the bare minimum, at least fucking own up to that shit, because I'm not part of it.
Well, that's, okay, so we know that that's not true. And the reason why we know that that's not true is the majority of Trump's cabinet and his closest inner circle have direct ties to Project 2025. They are part of the Heritage Foundation. His press secretary, that little 27-year-old girl, that's the mouthpiece of this administration, she was in promotional videos for the Heritage Foundation, which was the architects of this. And her husband, who is nearly 60, he is a multi-million-dollar donor. He's on the board of trustees. So don't tell me that you don't have direct ties to this one. The call is coming from inside out.
Yeah, I'm like, the call, baby girl. Like, it's been call. It's been like, we've had the conversation. Like, stop denying it.
Don't even deny it.
Like, girl.
So essentially, the whole goal of Project 2025 is it's super conservative, and it has right-wing ideologies. A lot of these come from religion. Like, that's how it's kind of structured. And, their version, like, this is the patriarchy, or here's this authoritarian, like, everyone follows this, like, linear structure. And what it essentially wants to do is all the progress we socially made, it wants to change that. It wants to restrict reproductive rights and access to women, and contraception's now on the table. Abortion's for sure on the chopping block. Contraception's going to be on the chopping block. It wants to dismantle gay marriage and put LGBTQI plus communities at risk. It essentially wants to promote mass deportation and reduce immigration, and other things. It wants to restructure the federal government. There are thoughts of saying that it limits your free speech. You can't say anything against the executive branch. You can turn the military against the public at any time you want to, creating like these military states. This is all within the framework of Project 2025, and this is online. This is public knowledge. It's 900 pages. You can read it online for free. You can order a book. It's real.
And the thing is, like, it's so crazy to me because, well, I mean, it is, obviously, it is 100% crazy. But, like, the fact that we're sitting here being like, oh my God, all these things, like, but there are some people that believe that these things should happen, like, truly deep in their gut and their soul.
They can't really say that they're patriotic or American if they think this. If they think this, they are following an authoritarian playbook. Like, you are more aligned with 1930s Germany than you ever have been with American values.
And I think they don't care about that.
They're brainwashed. I mean, like, if you say you love fascism, just say that if you were in Germany, you would have loved Adolf Hitler. You would have thought he was the bee's knees. Just say it. Say it with your chest. But don't hide behind an American flag. Don't.
No.
That's like pretty fucked, And that's just my personal opinion. But the history of this Heritage Foundation runs deep. And what I want to stress upon people is that this did not happen overnight. This was a long-term game. Like, they played the long game on this one. So Heritage Foundation actually was a group of conservative people that, got together during the Nixon administration. And that was like the war on drugs. There was some like leftover Vietnam residual stuff. Like, society was changing pretty much. And the Heritage Foundation absolutely took off running under Ronald Reagan, which was the 1980s. So the political map that we understand today, with certain geographical areas being more conservative and certain being more liberal, that map was solidified in the 1980s, right around Reagan's.
Wait,
Yeah.
when did it switch from like, because remember when like being a Democrat and like a Republican was like, and then it flip flopped?
So, yes, yes. That slowly started happening around the 1940s. So, Herbert Hoover, the guy that was president during the Depression, he was actually a Republican in office. And, the modern day Republican Party was actually more like Democratic or Dixiecrats. And then our current day Democratic Party was more like Republican, if you think about it. And that started shifting around the 1930s, 1940s. So after the Great Depression, FDR came in. FDR came in as a Democrat. And he's the one that put in Social Security. He really helped pull our economy through. He got us through World War II. So he ran these progressive values that you see like AOC and Bernie running under. That was more or less FDR. And that further solidified when we started getting into desegregation from Board versus Board of Education, when you got into the Civil Rights Act of 1964, that pissed off a lot of people, especially religious people. And more conservative politicians were like, we don't want to desegregate. We don't want to create more equal opportunities. Another thing that rocked that was the women's liberation, the finding of birth control, Roe versus Wade being overturned or being enshrined, that women could have an abortion. And then, Title IX, getting more women in school, having more equal opportunity. Those things were huge social upheavals for traditional American values. And at that time, you started seeing the parties flip. Slowly but surely, more people started getting rights. And you went like Stonewall. Yeah. So when people are like, the Democrats are really the ones that own slaves. And it's like, okay, but like the parties have flipped 1,000,005 times. Like parties throughout history have changed. That actually started happening in the 1940s and beyond. We started flipping. So when you look ideologically at the things that people believe in, you will find that the switch happened quite a long time ago. But that's the first thing. Like Abraham Lincoln, the Republicans were the ones who wanted to free the slaves. Okay, but then look at the parties now, ideologically. They can flip as they do.
No, yeah.
As they do.
Because I was always like, because when I was doing research, I was like, wait, which one is which? Like, what's happening? Like, I think that
it's confusing.
It's confusing, but I think honestly, all of these are just fucking labels. Like, be a good person. Like, honestly, like at the end of the day, it really is just be a fucking decent human being,
Yeah. So at that time, Ronald Reagan he's actually an actor. Ronald Reagan was an actor, babe. He was an actor, and then he became the governor of California, and then he ran.
Be self-aware. That is the most California thing I've ever.
He's an actor. I swear to God, he's an actor. So he's charismatic.
That's a policy.
For
girl, maybe
Arnold Schwarzenegger did.
I'm like this. Maybe I'll get some politics.
I mean, Arnold Schwarzenegger did. He was the governor of California. I mean, yeah. I mean, as long as you're charismatic. So like. I mean, Ronald Reagan was effective. He was a good public speaker. People thought he was handsome. He was a movie star. So, like, those were things that, like, I mean, not very similar. Like, oh, Donald Trump was on TV. Like, people actually kind of are thought to worship celebrity. Like, it's kind of thing. So, Ronald Reagan ran against Jimmy Carter, whose presidency, there was a lot of shit that was going on in the late 70s. So, he was the incumbent. His whole presidency was kind of plagued with issues. And here you go, you have Ronald Reagan coming in. And Ronald Reagan was kind of scanning the map of like, where can I get like more votes? Like, I want to win. At that time, right as he was running, you had the religious right and you had the moral majority and these groups of evangelical, pastors and these very, very prominent people in the South that are like doing like evangelical Bible Belt, like church revivals. They were kind of seeing all these social shifts happening and they're like, we don't like this. Because prior, they were largely apolitical. What really kind of got them in and getting pissed was desegregation, unfortunately. That really kind of got them into like, I don't really like what's going on. And then, of course, the abortion, because they by and large didn't give a shit about abortion for a long time. They were like, if it saves the mom, who cares? And then all of a sudden they started caring about things. They were like, oh, don't do that. Well, Ronald Reagan was like, wait a minute. This is a largely untapped demographic of voters. So what he did is he courted a lot of these conservative religious people. And the Heritage Foundation, actually, they all got together. They made this political group. he used the majority of their ideas throughout his presidency. And since then, the Heritage Foundation has been in every single conservative presidency and does policymaking.
It's just so crazy how like deep these lines run, because I just like, I don't come from a family of politics.
I do. I do.
Like, I don't, but like the thing is that, like, I definitely like have like my own like ideologies, and like my like identity is very like too, and it's like obviously like my family's very traditional, so I don't really have that combo with them, because I don't even know how to say it in Chinese, honestly. Less some of the stuff, but it's like, it's one of those things where it's like you can break away from like whatever the fuck, like, as long as you're, I mean, for me, because I see and I live my own reality, like what I want the world to be, and like a better place and stuff. So it's like, I don't know, but anyway, girl, my brain.
I know.
What is some information?
So the next information is, and this is where we're going to kind of end this segment, because I know we've gone a long time, but I promise everything's going to come full circle and your mind's going to be freaking blown. So what I want to end this segment with is, and this will all tie together in a beautiful bow, is Ronald Reagan's presidency was marked by one thing in my mind. Like, he did a bunch of other stuff that I don't agree with, but the one thing that I really, really, really want to condemn him for is he was in charge when HIV and AIDS epidemic started. And this administration sat on it for 5 years. They didn't do anything. In fact, there was this social idea that, you know, HIV and AIDS was a gay plague, and it was only for gay people because you were morally indecent and you were an abomination. And actually, before they did proper research, before they really started digging their heels in of like, why are people dying seriously and getting cancer and like people are getting sick, they called it GRID, which was gay-related immunodeficiency disease. Yeah, which makes you sick. Like, it was so stigmatized. And now we know, because we're smarter and we're better and we're more evolved, that anybody can contract HIV and AIDS. But back then, they didn't know. They were like, it's just for gay people. Or if you hug somebody, you might get it. If you drink out of the same glass from somebody, you might get it.
Misinformation again.
Yes. And a lot of it was because people were bigoted. They were scared. They were misinformed. And there wasn't enough scientific research to be like, hey, this is what this is. So people had preconceived notions. And they saw that one group of people was disproportionately affected compared to the rest of the population. So like, well, it's their problem, not mine, which is not the way to think if you think about public health. And then it became a problem for everybody, because at some point you're like, the medical community is screaming at you saying, people are dying. This isn't making sense. Like, we're losing people rapidly. And what I think moved the dial in particular was there was actually a teenager who contracted HIV from a blood transfusion. And his name, and I want to give him due justice. Yes, I want to give him proper justice. So I've got this out for the paper. Yeah, his name was Ryan White. And Ryan White had a genetic blood condition called hemophilia, which means that your blood doesn't clot appropriately. So you're at a risk for like bleeding out, bruising, things like that. So he required quite a bit of blood transfusions within his lifetime. And at that time, there was no screening for blood. So he somehow, some way, through a blood donor, got HIV. Because maybe the blood donor didn't realize that they had HIV, donated blood, and then he somehow got that blood. So that's how he contracted it. And they only gave him initially 6 months to live. And they were like, okay, 6 months came, and he started defying the odds a little bit. He got better. He was gaining weight. And he's like, Mom, I want to go to school. I want to go to school. And his mom's like, okay, like, you deserve to live a normal, I'm getting chills right now. You deserve to live a normal life. And when he tried to go back to a school in Indiana, the school board was like, absolutely not. There were protests. They prevented him from going to school. People were accusing him of being gay, saying the worst slurs. So much so that they had to sue the school board and say, like, no, like, you cannot discriminate my child from receiving an education based on him having a disease that is not transmittable. So eventually they won. It became a huge public thing because now they have a face that they're like, okay, so it isn't just gay people. It's children. It's anybody. Like, who's next? So that kind of set the fire for saying, let's have a deeper conversation. And throughout that process, you know, his story actually changed medicine to the better. Through his mother advocating for her child, they started developing, like, in hospitals, you need to have universal precautions, meaning you need to wear gloves and gowns. Before, people were giving blood transfusions and starting IVs and touching people's blood without gloves on.
That's crazy
Crazy.
business.
Crazy. Like, what? So they were like, we need to do universal precautions. We need to screen our blood. We need to create legislation that prevents children from, or any people from being discriminated against upon. And actually, federally, it's called the Ryan White Act. And Congress approves it. And that is your federal budgeting for your HIV research. Like, this child's story changed the world for so many people.
Wow.
I know. And he did die. He did die in 1990. So he lived for, I believe, like 6 years after his diagnosis. And, you know, it's so terrible what happened to him, but his mother's life work is to make sure her son didn't die in vain. And she's truly changed the world for people and has progressed us forward.
That's like so.
Isn't that wild?
That like changed a lot, because I'm like even thinking it's like, you know how like the whole stigma with like, oh, like HIV, it's like only the gays and stuff. It's like, you know how like that ideology has like stemmed into so many other things. Like when I went to donate sperm and I was like, oh, I'm gay, they're like, you can't donate sperm.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Because girl, they should are in college, but like,
So you don't get sperm, like the things you learn about.
No, but it's like they screen you and stuff. So I didn't even donate because they were like, oh no, you're gay, so like you cannot. I was like, what do you mean?
I would love to have a gay child. Are you kidding me? I'd be like, I want the gay sperm. What the fuck?
So I'm like, wait, what do you mean you can't? Like, I was so confused, but then I was like, okay, like
So dumb.
it was like weird, but then like, yeah, it's like little ideology like that like bleed through everything, because like you think that like it's only the gays, it's like straights can get it.
Yeah,
like it's like,
I mean, Magic Johnson got it in the 90s. Celebrities were getting it. It'd be like, hey, I'm HIV positive, you know. And we'll get in later. Like, I'm really gonna break HIV down and how you can transmit it and things like that, you know, because I want to have a whole segment and I'm gonna end it with that to kind of loop everything. But this was like a really good first half. I know, right?
my brain is like on woo. So we're gonna discuss more of this later, because I'm like kind of like, wow, the fact that one person can really affect the world. It's like, that's why I'm like, stop like saying like you don't matter and your story doesn't matter. Like, tell your story. Like, if you have a story to tell, like tell your story.
Yeah.
And I'm like, more of Emily being a teacher, because I'm like, well, the thing is that like when I hear you talk about all these things, I see how passionate you are about it. But then I also am like, oh my God, I need to like start rereading the books that I used to have. Like, because like I generally like, because life happened, like you don't really like go back and like reread like what made this country what it is, but also it's like what things have happened.
And it's complex. And it's intertwined, you know. And the reason why I bring up, you know, Heritage Foundation and Project 2025 and like Ronald Reagan is because like this didn't happen in a vacuum. Like, this has been around for forever. Like, we've been dealing with remnants of these ideas that have been passed along from generation to generation. And now you have people who are directly involved with Heritage Foundation. They're running for public office and trying to put bills on the floor and trying to change the social landscape of this country. So it is important to know where they came from, their thought processes on things. And like, when you're wrong, you're wrong. When you're right, you're right. So I'm sure there are even people can counter argument and say like, well, you know, certain liberal people believe this and that wasn't right. Yeah, everything's open for debate. We need to know how we got here to know how we can go forward. And you can't erase history. I know the whitewashing and the erasing of history when it's uncomfortable is happening, but read books before they're banned, educate yourself, because that is how this will be challenged.
But also, that's like why like I really respect, like, you know, Gavin Newsom, he was like, and it's like, he was like, oh, they had a podcast where they were talking to the other side.
Yeah.
And people were like, oh, why are you doing it? And then he was like, you literally have to have a conversation.
You have to.
And it's so hard. It's hard, but like, he's like, you still have to have one, because like, girl, they won.
I mean, I know people hate Gavin, but daddy, like, I've said this once, I say this again, I would ride him like a sit and spin.
Look at younger photos.
He's so handsome. And his wife she's smart as a whip. She's being fluent Spanish. Like, he's in a really good partnership. And also, I have to tell you guys this, and a lot of people don't realize this, and I know this is kind of like rambling, but I'm going to end it on this. The reason why I think, truthfully, Gavin Newsom and Donald Trump have a huge dick measuring contest, which obviously we know whose is bigger and to love, is because Gavin Newsom's first wife was Kimberly Guilfoyle when he was mayor of San Francisco. They got divorced. Kimberly Guilfoyle went on to date Don Jr. They were engaged. And she is now the ambassador to Greece. And he dumped her for a younger version of herself. So Kimberly Guilfoyle, his ex, has been directly embedded in that Trump organization. Swear to God. Oh. This is like celebrities star-crossing Hollywood nonsense. Like, people don't realize that.
Girl, I don't even know. I'm like, I don't even come from like politic family like that. But like all this shit is like so intertwined that I'm like, oh, I can't. This is like my brain is about to explode. But anyway,
next week,
what are we talking about next week?
Next week, you got
on part 2, because this is part 1, y'all. I want Emily to educate all y'all.
So part 2, I am going to go into STI prevention. I'm going to break down all the STIs, testing guidelines, how they're treated, the history of them, because there is some really interesting stuff. Like, I think your jaw's going to hit the floor, baby.
My jaw already kind of hit the floor today. That's all the information that you know. I'm like, oh, girl. But here's the thing. I'm excited because, honestly, I feel like I've done my STI research and stuff, but I haven't really, like, delved deeper into the newer stuff. Like, my friend the other day was telling me about, like, there's a new injection that lasts for months.
Yeah, I've heard about that. Girl.
I was like, since when?
Yeah.
All I heard is a pill.
Yeah. So.
But anyway, there's so many new things coming out. But I mean, I don't know. I'm on trust issues.
It's okay. It's okay. That's why you hear your information from trust.
But anyway, thanks for listening to this episode. Let us know if we should do more like educational stuff on that and like what topics you want us to like dive into, because as educational and as informative as like you are, like Emily is, we can't go on like every single bullet, but like if you want us to like dive into like one of the things that we talk about, then we'll go like full send on it.
Yeah. Knowledge is power, baby.
Yeah. Anyway, you can find us on Instagram. I'll link it down below. And I'm Dean.
And I'm Emily.
And we hope you have a great rest of your week.
See you next week.
See you next week. Stay tuned for part 2. Mwah.